Your hands are probably itching to scroll past this right now. That urge you feel, that's your brain working against you. I've spent decades studying the human brain, and I've made a fascinating discovery. When faced with information that could transform your life, your brain actually fights to keep you exactly where you are right now. Neurons are firing, telling you this is too long, or I'll check this out later. That resistance you feel, it's the most important signal that you need to pay attention. Most people will listen to that voice. They'll scroll away, missing the very information that could break the chains of their past and create an extraordinary future. But you're still here. You've already demonstrated that you're different from the majority who let their biology dictate their destiny. The human brain processes around 400 billion bits of information every second, but we're only conscious of about 2 zeros, zero of those bits. Think about that. Your attention is the most valuable resource you possess, and right now, your brain is working overtime to direct that attention away from anything that threatens the status quo. It's not personal, it's biological programming designed to keep you safe, comfortable, and unchanged. I've worked with thousands of people worldwide who decided to override that programming, and what they've achieved goes beyond what most would consider possible. They've healed from incurable conditions, transformed their bodies, created extraordinary opportunities, and accessed states of consciousness that most people never experience. All because they recognized that moment of resistance and pushed through it instead of giving in. Your brain has created an elaborate matrix of neural connections based on everything you've experienced, thought, and felt in your past. This network becomes so efficient that it practically runs on autopilot, creating the same thoughts, behaviors, and emotions day after day. It's why change feels so difficult. Your brain is literally structured to keep producing your past. When you try to think differently, act differently, or create a new future, you're going against decades of neural programming. That's why your brain sends those signals to stop, to wait, to distract yourself. It's trying to conserve energy and maintain the predictable patterns it knows so well. The moment you feel that resistance is the exact moment you should lean in, not pull away, that discomfort is the biological price of admission to an entirely new reality. I want you to understand what's really happening in your brain right now. Every thought, every feeling, every life experience you've had has been encoded in your neural network. These networks operate like well-worn paths in a forest. The more you walk them, the clearer and easier they become to follow. Your current life is the product of these neural pathways firing in nearly the same sequence day after day. Your brain loves efficiency. It's designed to recognize patterns and then automate them. This design helped our ancestors survive. They didn't have to consciously think about how to find food or avoid danger with each new day. Their brains automated these processes to conserve precious energy. This same mechanism that once ensured our survival now keeps us trapped in limitation. When you think about improving your life, creating something new, or breaking a habit, you're asking your brain to abandon its efficient automated pathways and create new ones. This requires chemical energy, physical restructuring of neural connections, and a temporary state of inefficiency. Your brain, operating from its primitive programming, interprets this inefficiency as a threat. It responds by flooding your system with chemicals that create resistance. That feeling of boredom, distraction, or sudden tiredness when you attempt something new, these resistance signals aren't random. They're specific neurological responses designed to guide you back to the safety of your automated past. When you find yourself thinking, "I already know this," or "this is too complicated," or suddenly remembering an urgent task, that's not coincidence. It's your brain's homeostatic mechanism working to maintain your current state. The irony is stunning. The organ responsible for your growth is often the very thing holding you back, but only if you let it. Your brain's default state is to run the same programs it's been running. Think about how you felt this morning when you woke up. Within moments, familiar thought patterns emerged, creating familiar emotional states, leading to familiar behaviors. This is your personality, the repetitive thoughts, feelings, and actions that you've unconsciously automated, neural circuits that fire together, wire together. When you repeatedly think the same thoughts, you strengthen those neural connections. When you repeatedly feel the same emotions, you strengthen the chemical pathways that produce those emotions. And when you consistently act in the same ways, you reinforce the behavioral patterns that define your life. This is why meaningful change feels so difficult. You're not just changing a behavior. You're attempting to override an entire automated biological system that's been reinforced throughout your lifetime. Your brain doesn't distinguish between changes that would improve your life and changes that might threaten it. To your primitive brain, all change represents a potential threat, demanding more energy and creating temporary inefficiency. That resistance you feel is your brain's way of protecting you from the unknown, even when the unknown might be exactly what you need. The human brain consumes approximately 20% of your body's energy, despite being only about 2% of your body weight. Creating new neural pathways requires even more energy. When you try to learn something new or change a pattern, your brain must form new connections, which demands additional glucose and oxygen. No wonder it resists. No wonder it resists. But here's what most people miss. That resistance is actually the doorway to transformation. The moment you feel your attention wandering, when you feel the urge to stop reading, when you think, "I'll come back to this later," that's the precise moment when pushing through will create the most significant change. Your brain creates specialized thought patterns to maintain the status quo. I call these resistance signatures, and learning to recognize them is essential for transformation. These aren't random thoughts. They're specific neural programs designed to keep you in familiar territory. One common resistance signature is the sudden emergence of skepticism. This sounds too good to be true, or where's the evidence? These thoughts may seem rational, but they often appear precisely when you encounter information that could change your life. True skepticism is valuable, but when it arrives the moment you're exposed to transformative ideas, it's usually resistance in disguise. Another resistance pattern is the "I already know this" thought. Your brain scans for anything familiar and then uses that familiarity to dismiss the entire message. Yes, certain concepts might be familiar, but intellectual understanding is worlds apart from embodied knowledge that creates real change. Perhaps the most insidious resistance signature is sudden physical discomfort. Your brain can actually create sensations of restlessness, fatigue, or even hunger. When you begin to engage with information that could disrupt your current programming, these physical sensations are powerful because they seem so real and unrelated to what you're learning. You might notice your mind suddenly remembering important tasks you've forgotten. This timing isn't coincidental. It's your brain creating distractions to pull you away from potential change. These urgent thoughts rarely appeared before you began engaging with transformative information. Emotional resistance manifests as unexpected mood shifts, boredom, irritation, or a vague sense of discomfort. These emotions aren't reactions to the content itself, but to the possibility of change that the content represents. The first step in overcoming these resistance patterns is simply recognizing them for what they are. When you feel that urge to stop, ask yourself, is this a genuine response to the information, or is this my brain's automated resistance to change? Just bringing awareness to these patterns begins to diminish their power. Your brain operates on the principle of energy conservation. Familiar neural pathways require less energy than creating new ones. When you think the same thoughts you've always thought, your brain efficiently moves along well-established neural highways requiring minimal energy. It's comfortable, predictable, and energetically economical. This efficiency creates what neuroscientists call the default mode network set of brain regions that activate when you're not focused on external tasks. This network runs your autopilot programs, reinforcing your existing identity and maintaining your emotional baseline. The brain's tendency toward energy conservation explains why inspiration fades. You attend a seminar, read a book, or watch a video that inspires you. For a brief period, you think differently and feel different emotions, but these new patterns require more energy than your familiar ones. Unless you consistently provide that energy through focused attention and practice, your brain will inevitably return to its default programming. This return to default isn't failure, it's biology. Understanding this allows you to approach change with greater compassion and more effective strategies. Change isn't about forcing yourself to be different, but about consistently providing the energy and attention needed to create new neural pathways until they become as efficient as the old ones. The good news is that while your brain is programmed for efficiency, it's also designed for adaptation. Neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, continues throughout your entire life. You can literally rewire your brain at any age. So, how do you break through this biological resistance? How do you override programming that's been reinforced for decades? The answer lies in understanding and working with your brain's mechanisms rather than fighting against them. The first key is sustained, focused attention. Your attention is literally the sculptor of your brain. When you direct focused attention towards specific thoughts or actions, you signal to your brain that these patterns are important, triggering the growth of new neural connections. But this attention must be consistent. Sporadic efforts won't create lasting change. Most people give up when they don't see immediate results, not realizing that neural rewiring takes time. The brain requires repeated signals before it commits resources to build new lasting pathways. This is why consistency matters more than intensity in creating change. The second key is emotional engagement. When information is paired with elevated emotion, it creates stronger, faster neural connections. Your brain prioritizes experiences with emotional significance, allocating more resources to encoding and retrieving that information. This is why emotionally charged experiences create such powerful memories. You can use this mechanism intentionally by combining new information or behaviors with positive emotional states. When you generate feelings of joy, gratitude, or inspiration while learning or practicing new behaviors, you dramatically accelerate the formation of new neural pathways. The third key is creating the right environment for change. Your physical environment contains countless cues that trigger your established neural patterns. Changing your environment, even temporarily, reduces these triggers and creates space for new patterns to emerge. This is one reason retreats and workshops can be so effective. They remove you from the environmental cues that activate your default programming. You can create this effect in your daily life by designating specific times and spaces for your transformation practices. Even simple environmental changes signal to your brain that something different is happening, creating an opening for new neural patterns. Perhaps the most powerful key is meditation. Not the kind where you simply relax, but specific forms of meditation that combine focused attention with elevated emotional states while disconnecting from environmental cues. This creates the perfect conditions for neuroplasticity. In proper meditation, you're directing focused attention away from your external environment and your physical body, reducing the sensory input that reinforces your existing identity. You're simultaneously generating coherent brain wave patterns that facilitate the formation of new neural connections. And when you add elevated emotions like gratitude, joy, or compassion, you create the chemical environment for rapid, lasting neural change. This isn't speculation or philosophy, it's neuroscience. When measured with EEG technology, effective meditation creates high-amplitude, synchronized brain wave patterns that facilitate communication between different brain regions. This synchronization allows for the formation of new complex neural networks that literally expand your capacity for thought, emotion, and behavior. The coherent brain wave patterns produced during meditation also generate electromagnetic fields that affect quantum particles. This is where biology meets quantum physics. The observer effect in quantum mechanics demonstrates that the mere act of conscious observation affects the behavior of subatomic particles. When applied to your life, this means your focused attention literally reorganizes the energy and matter that make up your reality. Your consciousness isn't just observing your life. It's actively creating it at the most fundamental level. Most people think of reality as fixed and objective, existing independently of their awareness. But quantum physics has demonstrated that reality at its most fundamental level is probabilistic rather than deterministic, existing as fields of potential until collapsed into specific outcomes. Through observation, your thoughts and feelings are not just responses to reality, they are creating it. Every thought produces an electromagnetic signal that extends beyond your physical body. These signals interact with the quantum field, influencing the probability of certain events and experiences manifesting in your life. This isn't magical thinking. It's the frontier where advanced physics meets neuroscience. The electromagnetic fields generated by your brain don't stop at your skull. They extend outward, interacting with fields of energy and information beyond your physical body. Your consciousness is not confined to your brain. It's an interactive field that both responds to and shapes the world around you. When you remain in your default neural programming, thinking the same thoughts and feeling the same emotions day after day, you're collapsing the infinite possibilities of the quantum field into the same limited reality you've been experiencing. You're using your creative consciousness to recreate your past. But when you interrupt those patterns through focused attention and elevated emotion, you begin interacting with the quantum field in new ways, opening yourself to possibilities that existed beyond your previous awareness. This is how people create what appears to be miraculous changes in their health, relationships, and circumstances. Your brain doesn't distinguish between experiences in your external environment and experiences you create through vivid mental rehearsal. When you combine clear intention with elevated emotion in a state of focused awareness, your brain processes this internal experience as if it were already happening in your external reality. This creates a fascinating effect. Your brain begins producing the neurochemistry associated with the new experience before it has manifested in your physical reality. These neurochemical changes alter your perception, making you more likely to notice opportunities and resources that support your new intention. They also change how you show up in the world, affecting how others respond to you. Your body is the unconscious mind. It doesn't think in words, but in feelings and sensations. Every thought you think creates a corresponding chemical response in your body. When you think the same thoughts repeatedly, your body becomes conditioned to expect and even crave certain chemical states. This explains why changing long-established patterns can create physical discomfort. Your cells have developed receptors for specific emotional chemicals, creating a biological dependency. When you interrupt familiar thought patterns, you interrupt the supply of these chemicals, creating withdrawal symptoms similar to drug addiction. These withdrawal symptoms manifest as resistance, the emotional and physical discomfort that emerges when you attempt to change established patterns. Understanding this biological mechanism helps you recognize that this discomfort isn't a sign that change is impossible or wrong, but a natural part of the transformation process. Epigenetics has revealed that your environment, including your thoughts and emotions, influences how your genes express. Your DNA isn't your destiny, it's a set of potentials that can be activated or deactivated based on your internal and external environment. When you change your thoughts and emotions, you literally change which genes are expressed in your cells. This means many conditions you might consider fixed or inherited can be influenced through conscious intervention. Your thoughts and feelings create your biology, not the other way around. When you understand this, you recognize that many limitations you've accepted as permanent are actually fluid and changeable. Let me share some examples that illustrate these principles in action. At our workshops around the world, I've witnessed transformations that conventional science would consider impossible. These aren't isolated incidents, but consistent results that emerge when people apply these principles with focus and commitment. A woman in her 60s had been diagnosed with progressive Parkinson's disease. She trembled constantly, struggled to walk, and had been told her condition would only worsen with time. After learning to interrupt her stress response through meditation and generate elevated emotional states, her symptoms began to diminish. Within 6 months, her tremors had reduced by 70%, and she was moving with greater ease. Medical scans showed increased dopamine production in her brain, something her doctors had said was impossible. A young man who had struggled with severe depression for over a decade found that no medication provided lasting relief. Through daily practice of focused meditation and emotional elevation, he began experiencing periods without depression for the first time since childhood. Within a year, he was medication-free and reporting consistent states of well-being. His brain scans showed significant changes in activity in regions associated with depression. A woman who had experienced 3 failed business ventures and was facing bankruptcy used these principles to transform her professional life. By interrupting her patterns of anxiety and self-doubt and mentally rehearsing success while in elevated emotional states, she began making decisions from a completely different mindset. Within 8 months, she had launched a successful new business and repaid most of her debts. These examples share common elements. Consistent practice, the combination of focused attention with elevated emotion and persistence through initial resistance. None of these individuals experienced overnight transformation, but all created changes that others had told them were impossible. The most important aspect of their success wasn't the specific technique they used, but their willingness to continue despite not seeing immediate results. They understood that biological change takes time and that resistance is part of the process, not evidence of failure. When people come to my workshops, they often experience profound states of consciousness and significant insights. But the real work begins when they return to their everyday environment, where all the cues that trigger their old patterns are waiting. Those who create lasting change understand that transformation isn't a single event but a daily recommitment to becoming someone new. They recognize that some days will be easier than others, and they don't interpret temporary returns to old patterns as failure but as opportunities for greater awareness. The most important quality for transformation isn't willpower but fascination. A genuine curiosity about what's possible and how your mind and body work. Approaching change with fascination rather than force creates an entirely different energy and leads to more sustainable results. Your brain wants you to skip important information to stay in familiar territory, to keep running the same programs that have defined your past. This isn't because your brain is working against you, but because it's operating according to biological principles that once served our survival. The resistance you feel when encountering new ideas or practices isn't a sign that change is impossible, but a doorway to possibility. When you understand the mechanisms behind this resistance, you can work with your biology rather than against it, creating lasting transformation. The people I've worked with who have created the most extraordinary changes in their health, relationships, and circumstances share one quality. They recognize the moment of resistance as the exact moment to lean in rather than pull back. They understood that discomfort is the biological price of growth and were willing to pay that price. You have within you the same capacity for transformation. Your consciousness isn't limited by your past or your current circumstances. It's an interactive field of possibilities waiting to be collapsed into new realities through your focused attention and elevated emotional states. Every person who has ever transformed their life has faced the same biological resistance you're facing. The difference isn't in their capacity, but in their choice to push through that resistance consistently until new neural patterns became their default state. Each time you overcome resistance, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with change itself, making future transformations easier. You're not just changing specific thoughts or behaviors, but developing a skill of neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize itself in response to your conscious direction. This a skill of directed neuroplasticity may be the most valuable capability you can develop in a world of accelerating change. While others remain trapped in outdated programming, unable to adapt to new circumstances, you can continuously evolve, creating internal states that support your well-being regardless of external conditions. Your brain may want you to skip this information, to return to the comfort of familiar patterns, to continue creating your future from the limitations of your past, but you've stayed with me. Pushing through that resistance, demonstrating that you're capable of overriding your default programming. This choice to stay present with information that challenges your existing patterns is the first step in creating the new neural pathways that will define your future. The discomfort you might be feeling right now is not an indication that transformation is impossible for you, but evidence that you're in the process of creating new neural connections. This discomfort is the sensation of your brain reorganizing itself in response to new information and possibilities. Every person who has ever achieved extraordinary transformation has experienced this same discomfort. The difference isn't in their capacity for change, but in their willingness to embrace this discomfort as a necessary and valuable part of the growth process. You now understand the biological mechanisms of resistance and transformation. You recognize that your thoughts and emotions aren't just responses to your reality, but creative forces that shape it from the quantum level up. And you have practical tools to work with these mechanisms rather than against them. The choice before you isn't whether transformation is possible. The evidence from neuroscience, epigenetics, and quantum physics clearly demonstrates that it is. The choice is whether you're willing to apply this understanding consistently, pushing through resistance until new neural patterns become your default state. Your future isn't determined by your past, unless you continue running the same neural programs that have created your present. At any moment, including this one, you can begin interrupting those programs and creating new patterns that align with the future you intend to create. The resistance your brain generates isn't your enemy, but a signpost pointing toward transformation. Each time you recognize and move through this resistance, you're not just changing a specific thought or behavior, but developing your capacity for conscious evolution. This capacity for self-directed evolution, for becoming something beyond what your past has programmed you to be, is what makes us uniquely human. It's not just about improving your circumstances, but about expanding your consciousness beyond the limitations of material reality. The greatest gift you can give yourself is the commitment to this process of conscious evolution, not just for what it will create in your external reality, but for who you will become through the journey itself. The joy, wonder, and gratitude you'll experience as you discover capabilities beyond what you've previously expressed are the true rewards of transformation. Your brain wanted you to skip this information because it threatens the stability of your existing neural programs. But you chose to stay, to push through resistance, to engage with possibilities beyond your familiar patterns. This choice itself is evidence of your capacity for transformation. The neural pathways created by this choice are the beginning of a new default state. One where growth and possibility take precedence over comfort and familiarity. With consistent attention and practice, these pathways will strengthen until transformation becomes your natural state and resistance becomes a welcome sign that you're expanding beyond previous limitations. The question isn't whether you can transform, but whether you will continue providing the attention, energy, and practice required for these new neural patterns to become your default state. The biology of transformation is universal. Those who succeed aren't endowed with special capabilities, but with special commitment to the process itself. You now have everything you need to begin this journey, not just information, but understanding of the mechanisms that create resistance and transformation. With this understanding comes the responsibility and opportunity to apply it consistently, creating not just a better version of your past, but possibilities beyond what your current identity can imagine.